really on it, his X's and O's. Like I feel like he's going to be such a good offensive coordinator because he is kind of an extension of Kyle, and I feel like Kyle and him really think very similarly. So I think you're going to see a lot of the same things in New York that you saw from Kyle in San Francisco.
That is what Kyle Juszczyk told us about new Jets offensive coordinator Mike LaFleur. To hear the whole conversation, check out our podcast in the description below, or you can find the whole video on YouTube as well.
Yep. Also, check out this YouTube page, this video, like it, subscribe to the page. Guy, John, you guys know the drill. Get on it.
One thing you didn't hear there from Kyle was he talked about his relationship with LaFleur and how he had a great relationship with him and kind of the way he communicates with players. We took that part out. In terms of just getting in New York, what you got out of San Francisco, some good insight on what the Jets offense will look like.
I think the unique part anytime you get hired as a young offensive coordinator with a defensive head coach, there's still things out of your control. You don't control the roster. You don't control even the quarterback. And we know the Jets quarterback situation is anything but, it's murky, right? Who knows? It could go about 10 different directions. He does, and I think a good example of this is Joe Brady in Carolina, who had different momentum, right, coming from LSU, but this guy has this Kyle momentum. He's got a chance to be a star. And when I say a star, like to become a head coach relatively quickly because you stand out. Saleh has nothing to do with the offense. Nothing. This guy is the head coach of half the team. And let's face it, the most important half when it comes to hiring process, ownership. And we just talk more offense than we do defense. Like this guy, his brother's a head coach too, so the name recognition is not going to hurt. His brother's had a lot of success. If this goes well in a couple years, how Kyle Shanahan he was Kyle's right-hand guy for years. His brother's having success in Green Bay. How's this guy not a head coach? Is it out of the realm possibility if LaFleur next year, let's say they draft a rookie quarterback and they're just teams competitive, 7-8 wins, and we'd be talking highly about Robert Saleh. But I think this guy would be interviewing for head coaching jobs next year, right?
Yeah, one of two things is going to happen, right? He's either going to coach Sam Darnold or he's going to coach a highly touted rookie quarterback, high-profile rookie quarterback, one of the two. Either way, it's going to be a lot of eyeballs. So if Sam Darnold looks a lot better this year, Mike LaFleur. If they draft a rookie quarterback, anything that goes well, he'll get a lot of credit for. The other thing is, when we talk about the Niners and Sam Darnold, like would the Niners trade for him? Joe Douglas, who's the GM, has been there. He's seen Sam Darnold. He's been scouting college. He knows what his options are. But I would imagine we've talked a lot of it like, what does Robert think? It's really more, what does Mike LaFleur think of Sam Darnold? And is it the same thing that Kyle Shanahan would think? Would they view him the same way? Now, I will say this. Even if Mike LaFleur likes Sam Darnold, that doesn't necessarily mean to me that he wouldn't be the Niners quarterback because what they have is an option. They have the option to keep Sam Darnold. They might like him, but they might like Zach Wilson or Trey Lance or Justin Fields more. And so the idea that he likes him, which means he wouldn't give him to Kyle, I don't subscribe to just because they have a different option than Kyle has, which is the draft. Like they have their pick, right? But I do think there's something there. Like whether or not Sam Darnold is still there, who they draft, that seems to me like that's going to be a lot of what Mike LaFleur thinks, don't you think?
Also have, been a rumored destination to Deshaun Watson and their team with multiple first-round picks these next couple of years, right, from Seattle.
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to LaFleur, he's not in charge.
That's true.
The general manager is in charge. Even Saleh doesn't get to pick the players. Now, you don't hire a coach to get rid of guys your coaches like. There's a balance being struck. That's where I think there's so much unknown. This putting their staff together, those two guys over this the last couple weeks into these next couple weeks, they got to figure out kind of their plan of attack, right? And whatever they do could set this guy up. If they got Deshaun Watson, who's to say they couldn't be like a wild card team next year and this guy 100% gets a job?
Well,
right?
but people have said, why would Deshaun go to the Jets? He has a no trade. He gets to dictate terms. Well, maybe he likes Robert Saleh, the New York market. Maybe he's heard some of what Kyle Juszczyk said about Mike LaFleur, right? If he's heard any of that, then maybe it's not something that we've seen necessarily on a big stage, but it's something that he maybe has heard, from other players.
I think the way LaFleur gets the most credit by far them trading Darnold, them using the second pick on one of the young quarterbacks, and that guy being good.
You don't think he gets more credit if they keep Darnold and he turns him into like a really good quarterback?
You're right.
Because then it's like, look, it's like,
okay, if we had to rank the credit, you get the least amount.
Yeah,
you get Deshaun, you don't get that much credit, right? You're just not.
Right.
Even if your team's good.
Right, but you're still going to get a
more.
job in 2 years.
You would still get a job, but you would. You're right. I mean, Sam Darnold, if you would made him like 32 touchdowns and 7 picks or something, and your team's good, and you just didn't have to use an asset, you got to use that number 2 pick, maybe trade back and get some more sweet players. That's the ideally, if you're them, like, and you believe in LaFleur, you keep Sam Darnold.
Right.
Because then you use the pick on other players.
On Penei Sewell or something. I've watched this show a few times on HGTV called Love It or List It. You have a house, they redo, they demo that, they demolish that house, rebuild it, and then you have the option to either keep the house that's been rebuilt or sell it and then use that money to buy yourself a new house. Most people, based on my very little viewing of the show, keep the house. They're like, well, it's better to just keep the one I've got. I don't have to move neighborhoods. I don't have to change anything. And now I've got all this extra equity I can use on something else because my house is worth more. I think that is the preference. If you told them Sam Darnold and Zach Wilson will be the same player in 3 years, and they'll both be really good, what would you do? Now, you could argue, well, but Zach Wilson will be cheaper in 3 years than Sam Darnold will be in 3 years. But I would think you just stay put, right?
Well, as a general manager, I'd go, well, worst case scenario, I'll just take Jamar Chase at number 2 or
exactly.
Penei Sewell, right? I mean, so if I got a good player, I would just have the option to get another sweet player where I do not have that if I trade Sam Darnold, especially if he nets me a second-round pick. You 100% keep Sam.
Yeah. I'd be interested. I'd be interested what they played the Jets. I'd wonder what Mike and Kyle thought, and Mike McDaniel when they watched.
We're gonna find out pretty quickly.
Yeah.